What's going on, fam? Coach Gabe here. For those of you who are new to the channel, I help busy professionals lose weight and build functional strength with kettlebells in a time-efficient fashion, which is why today I will be doing a reaction video to physical therapist extraordinaire Jeff Cavalier, who did a tutorial on the kettlebell clean. Now, Jeff has 13.8 million subscribers on YouTube and is an absolute legend in the fitness space. And something that he does with Athlean is he claims to put the science back in strength. And as someone who has an exercise science degree myself, who also has been coaching the kettlebell for 12 years, I thought this would be a great opportunity to go ahead and do a reaction to his tutorial and see what he has to say. With that said, let's dive in.
What's up, guys? Jeff Cavalier, Athlean.com. I'm going to show you today how to put one of the most powerful exercises maybe back in your arsenal because you gave up on it because it was beating the hell out of your wrists. I'm talking about the hang clean, but done with a kettlebell.
The kettlebell clean is notorious for just beating the out of your wrist when you are a beginner. And that was my experience as well. When I first started learning this exercise, I had goose egg sized lumps on the back of my forearm because I simply didn't have my technique dialed in.
You see, the kettlebell actually allows us to do this exercise easier. So even if you've never tried it before, it's one of the most powerful exercises you can do. And you want to start doing it, but you're going to want to learn the right way. Now,
the reason he says it's easier with a kettlebell is simply the way that the implement moves around you. So if you've ever tried to do an Olympic lift like a barbell clean, it is super tough because you have to make sure that you move your body around the bar, which is much easier said than done.
First of all, we'll cover in another video the hang clean done with a barbell. But there's a lot more involved with the barbell that might discourage people from even trying it in the first place because you have this element of triple extension from your ankles, through your knees, through your hips, even through your low back. You're trying to coordinate and then get underneath the bar and time it perfectly. If you haven't...
Not to mention, it requires a of external rotation of the shoulder to be able to comfortably catch a barbell in the front rack position here, which you don't have to worry about so much when you're doing this version of the exercise with the kettlebell, which is one of the advantages, is that we don't actually need as much mobility as we would to do, say, to do the Olympic version of the lift.
But the idea is this: when you go to clean the bell, here's what people will do most of the time. They pick it up and they try to pull it back this way so they can get into this rack position. But look what happens. As they pull it up, even if they do what they're supposed to and keep the bar close to their body, in this case, the bell close to their body, when they get to the top, they flip, the bell comes down and whacks into the back of their wrist.
That is exactly what happens. Now, what's interesting here is he's talking about keeping that kettlebell super tight to the body. Now, for those of you who have some kettlebell experience, that might seem strange to you, especially if you're used to doing it from more of a swing style position where you're taming the arc and that kettlebell comes slightly out and away from you. The reason he's talking about this is because he's using it as a modification to the barbell variation, which does require you to keep the bar in that case super tight to the body. So he is just using this as a modification for the bar. So he's doing an Olympic style version of a kettlebell clean. So it is going to be a bit different than what I would typically teach or what many other kettlebell practitioners teach.
Now you do that a few times and you're going to hate doing kettlebell cleans, but you don't have to have that.
Facts. You hit yourself in the back of the forearm a few times and it's pretty much takes the fun out of kettlebell cleans unless you do it right, which hopefully he has some tips for us here showing us how to do so.
Here's a couple tips to make sure that it doesn't. When you're pulling up, the first thing you want to do, the first visualization that you want to have is that you're zippering a jacket. So
did you just say zippering?
Instead of doing this and flipping your arm away from your body, if you were zippering your jacket, you'd
zipping.
Keep everything nice and tight, right? So if I was right here, I'd be zippering the jacket up.
For the love, Jeff, the word is zipping. Okay, with that said, I'm busting his balls a little bit here about saying zipping versus zippering, putting the science back in strength, apparently not English back in strength. Zing, on we go.
But you see as I get to the top, that I actually rotate my hand. So as I rotate my hand, that's going to actually rotate the bell around my hand. So,
okay. I do like what he's saying about keeping the kettlebell tight since he is trying to do an Olympic lift. And while he's saying zippering, and I'm, again, giving him a hard time for that, he is right. If you keep that kettlebell nice and tight before doing the transition as you insert your hand through the handle, that is going to make for a much smoother transition. So he's talking about rotating that thumb up, what he's talking about when saying rotating your hand. And if you don't rotate your thumb up, what happens is because your palm is facing down, that kettlebell only has one place to go. That is over the top of the hand and crashing into the back of your forearm, which is exactly what he's trying to prevent in this tutorial. So overall, right here, pretty good cues.
So it's not flipping it up and over. It's coming up, rotating around my hand into this position.
Right here, see how he has that kettlebell handle sitting straight across his palm? I don't actually like that, because whenever you are catching a kettlebell in the front rack position or overhead, you actually want to have the kettlebell handle sitting across the heel of your palm at a 45-degree angle. So let's go ahead and show you what that looks like here. So when you grab your kettlebell, you have to know a little bit about the anatomy. We have the body of the bell, we have the handle, we have the horns, which is going to be this vertical part here, and there's the corner, which is in between the horn and the handle. If you look on your index finger side, you actually want to insert your hand up into that corner. That way that handle sets across at a 45-degree angle and not straight across the palm like he is showing here. Hopefully he is just going to show this once and ends up correcting it because he's talking. We'll find out as we continue.
Okay, that's the first thing you want to feel. The second thing you want to feel is that they say that you're kind of spearing the kettlebell. So when I come up, obviously, because as I go faster with this, I want to spear the kettlebell here and then spear it. So I'm actually sticking my hand into the bell, trying to push my palm of my hand into the handle.
That's a little better angle that he's showing here. And this is more so what I was talking about. Now, when he's saying spearing, we actually have a term for this when we're coaching, for those of us who are kettlebell coaches, and that term is insertion. So the hand insertion is what we're referring to when you are spearing your hand through the handle, and it is a key portion of the kettlebell clean to make sure that that bell actually rotates around your forearm and not over the top.
I'm not just casually just letting it flop in here. I'm actually coming in and then spearing it, going up that way, okay? So you want to have a little bit more of an aggressive approach to getting the kettlebell around your arm. Thirdly, what you want to make sure that you're doing is, as you pull the kettlebell up, you got to keep it loose in your fingers. It should start down here in your fingers, okay? It shouldn't be gripped like really tightly as you would maybe a barbell. What you want to do is keep it loose in your fingers so that as you come up, you can maneuver your hand around and get into that position.
This is true. So you actually do want to start with that kettlebell sitting more towards the root of your finger. And you actually slide your hand kind of up and down the handle, which I'll go ahead and show you here. So when he's talking about this, here's what we should see. When you grab here by the root of the finger, your hand should actually slide up towards the corner like so. And it's actually this bump into the corner as you spear your hand through that rotates the kettlebell around the forearm. As you can see, it goes around here, not over the top. And it is because we start in the root of the finger. So again, another good cue here.
And fourth, one of the key elements here is, what is the position of your wrist? Remember, a strong wrist is going to have slight extension in it, right? A flat wrist, or certainly a wrist that flexed here, is not going to have as strong of a grip as one that has slight extension. That's why when you go to grab a doorknob, you don't grab it like this or like this. You grab it like this to turn it. So
I don't know anybody who grabs a doorknob like this. How do you grab a doorknob? Let me know in the comments below. Personally, I go thumb up like this when I grab a doorknob. But this, I'm skeptical, Jeff. A little skeptical there on that one.
Have more force in your grip. So when you come up, as you come up and you turn, you want to have your wrist in extension, because what it's doing is not just giving you a better grip on the kettlebell ultimately when you get to the top, but it's also giving you sort of a platform to rest it on as you come up. So as I come up and my wrist is, my wrist was flat and I got it over here, it's going to have to bang at some point. But if I came up and my wrist was an extension, as you can see right here, it's actually almost resting on my wrist the whole time it goes around. There is no banging.
This is just bad advice. I'm not going to lie here. When it comes to having the kettlebell, you do want more of a neutral wrist. Now, the wrist extension he's talking about, it is okay to have so long as you actually have the handle sitting across the heel of your palm, which is what I was talking about earlier. He's talking about using the center of your palm as a platform, but that's just going to hang a bunch of weight off the flexors of the wrist, which is not going to feel great. So we want to make sure, instead of having the weight just hanging here off of our palm, which is going to put a ton of stress on the flexors of the wrist, is we actually want to make sure that we are going towards the heel of the palm here. If you get that handle angled across the heel of the palm here, if you look at the best kettlebell sport athletes in the world, he's talking about, having a better grip at the top in the front rack position. You don't need a better grip in the top for a front rack position. That's part of the beauty of this shape of the handle of a kettlebell, is that we can actually have this outer horn here resting against our forearm, and you can tuck your fingers behind the handle. And this becomes a really important skill, by the way, when you start doing things like double kettlebell cleans, understanding how far to keep your hands apart. And if you just want to make sure you never crash your fingers together, together, you can simply tuck your fingers behind the handle like this here. So again, not really a need for a grip, and I disagree with this. I prefer more of a neutral wrist, and every kettlebell coach that I know would say the same thing. If you do want a slight amount of wrist extension, there's nothing wrong with going like this here, but again, notice that it is on the heel of the palm, not on the palm itself, which is going to save those wrist flexors, and it's something really important for those of you wanting to learn the kettlebell clean so you don't get discouraged by wrist pain. Moving on.
Okay, so you can see just like that. So what does it look like in practice? You grab a heavier kettlebell right here. You come down and here and up.
That is a not very good looking front rack position there. So you see there's a gap in between that pinky side bone on his forearm, that's called your ulna there, and the horn. We actually don't want any gap when we're talking about this space here between the horn and the handle. So we should see that resting along the outside edge of the forearm, which we currently don't see. That is something that I would recommend that you get dialed in here, because again, he has that handle sitting straight across the palm, which we don't want.
Down, up. Your ending position is right here.
Nope, the ending position is not right there. It's again, he has the handle in the wrong spot going straight across the palm. We want that at a 45-degree angle across the heel of the palm, and I'm going to keep saying it over and over and over again, because if you are trying to learn this movement, this is a key component to not only this exercise, but to any exercise in the front rack position. Single arm front squats, single arm front rack carries. If you want to go into an overhead movement like snatches or single arm overhead presses with the kettlebell, that same 45-degree position across the heel of the palm is key.
Right on your forearm. Now, if you want to press it, you're right here, down, and press up. Come down and down again, okay? But again, when you bring the bell up, you don't have to worry about necessarily the timing of your lower body. You don't have to necessarily worry about the triple extension. It's all going to happen because you're just going to come up forcefully, but pull the zipper.
I would disagree that it's just going to happen. I see people all the time who do things like kettlebell cleans and who do things like kettlebell swings who either have kind of a muted knee, meaning they leave a slight bend in the knee, or who have a muted hip and don't get their hips fully opened up. So it won't exactly take care of itself just because you're doing a hang clean. It still takes some coaching.
And then rotate around, down. Pull the zipper, rotate around. And your hand winds up nice and deep.
This is a better front rack position here that he has with the kettlebell. He still has a little bit of a gap in between that horn there on the kettlebell and the outside edge of the forearm, but this is getting closer to that 45-degree angle that we want.
In that pocket there, your fingers have speared the kettlebell. And again, it's right here, resting here. It never flipped over the top, especially something like this would really probably make your wrist hurt. And then, of course, when I'm coming back down again,
Man, what's going to make your wrist hurt is hanging the weight off the center of your palm. That's what's going to make your wrist hurt.
Roll it off. So I'm trying to encourage you, make sure you do the exercise. It's a great way to build explosiveness in your upper body, and in a way that you actually can do it with a lot less time.
Okay, when you're on camera a lot, you do misspeak sometimes, but he just said that this is great for developing explosiveness of the upper body, and I'm hoping that he meant to say of the lower body, because your glutes and your hamstrings, which are your primary hip extensors, and this is an explosive hip extension exercise, are going to be what moves the bell, and your arms are going to be there for an assist. So it's not an explosive upper body exercise, it's an explosive lower body exercise, and your arm is just there for the assist.
Technicality than you would with the bar. If you're looking for a way to train more explosively, to train like an athlete,
Okay, so he's into his pitch here. Here's what I'm going to say. Overall, this was a decent tutorial. He started off strong when it came to the tips with having the kettlebell handle rest in the root of your finger. And even when it came to rotating the hand, that was a great pointer. But things really fell apart when it came to the catch, because he kept demonstrating that handle sitting straight across the palm. And when you catch like this will piss your wrist off like crazy. It's not so much the wrist extension that is going to prevent the banging of the kettlebell into the wrist. What it's going to be is making sure that you are bumping the corner of the handle on the index finger side as you insert your hand through, which Jeff was referring to as spearing. We refer to that as hand insertion. If you do that, that is what initiates the rotation of the bell around the forearm and allows you to catch, so long as there is no gap on that ulna side here. So you want to make sure the horn of the kettlebell on that side actually rests along the ulna. And if you do that, you will have a much more pleasant experience with the kettlebell clean. Now, rather than me just sitting here at a desk and trying to explain this to you, if you actually want to see how to do the kettlebell clean the right way from start to finish, I have done a full tutorial on this exercise myself, and you can check it out right here. Hope you enjoyed this. And if you have any suggestions for who you would like to see me react to next, drop it in the comments and I'll see you on the next one.